Hi investigators, Mike Evans from the Australian Security Academy with this week's episode of Spy Curious in relation to what's been happening in the investigations industry around Australia this week. Just this afternoon over at Investigations Uni, Pat Flynn delivered the presentation on recording conversations. Now this has hit the news currently down in Victoria because Sean Buckley, the Ultratune boss, has been recorded assaulting his girlfriend, who's pictured here, Jennifer Cruz, and she wants that to be admitted into court as admissible evidence, and Sean doesn't want it there. So there's a big argy-bargy over the recorded conversations. And if you're an Australian Security Academy student, you had access to this video this week that tells you all about recording conversations in your state at Investigations Uni. So you can go there and watch that presentation on the replay right now. So that's just happened over at Investigations Uni. Whoops. Whoa. Hi, Chris. Get into that coffee, mate, and have a Tim Tam with a good on you. Hello, Amber from down in Canberra. Great to see you, Amber. G'day, Joy. Great to see you. Thanks for saying hello, everybody. We just looked at Investigations Uni too because Chris and Jamie this week both sent me an alert this week alerting me to the fact that there was bullying going on in Victoria at a Christmas party where a boss tied up a young apprentice to a hoist, lifted him up, took his shirt off and started slapping him at the event. Now, this was supposed to be funny, and the boss has admitted to it in court and is facing an $80,000 fine as a result of his actions at that Christmas party. That coffee sounds good on Friday afternoon, Scott. Good on you. Thanks for calling in. People, if you have a workplace obligation and you have to say g'day, please say g'day in the chat. If you don't worry about it, but say g'day anyway. G'day, Jack. How's things down in beautiful Tasmania? Great to see you, mate. So that young man was bullied at a Christmas party, and it was some kind of like drunken prank. I don't know. I wasn't there. There's little details about it. Are you going to investigate pranks in your job today as a government, corporate or private investigator? Yes, you are. And they get really out of control, and you will see stuff you couldn't even dream of. And I only tell you about this because I like to make everybody cringe every week, like I did last week. So the lady had reached retirement age. She'd worked at that place for 20 years as an accountant. So she's reached retirement. They've given her a gold watch at this workplace, and it's a woolen mill. Rather harmless, isn't it? Where they create wool, which your aunties and your grandmothers, they knit things, balls of wool, that sort of thing. They make blankets and other woolen products. What could go wrong? Well, the lady's retired, and it's tradition at this woolen mill, when you retire, they take you out onto the factory floor and they lift you up and throw you in to a really large vat of water. There's two vats of water in the woolen mill. One's cold water, the other one's hot water. So they took her out to the factory floor after the presentation of the watch, a few nibbles and a couple of drinks, and they threw her into the vat. Which one do you reckon they threw her in? The cold one or the hot one? The hot ones have it. They threw her into the hot one. 97% of her body received serious burns. Didn't happen 50 years ago, people. This happened recently, where we have no bullying policies, processes, procedures, and legislation in the workplace. Her final day at work resulted in severe injury to that lady. Her last day. Because idiots at work had to play a prank. Now, luckily, we shouldn't have to tolerate that anymore, but there you see a young apprentice lifted up on a hoist, stripped bare onto the chest and slapped by his boss. Humiliating and embarrassing, and recorded by fellow workers there. So that boss is facing an $80,000 fine. It's our job to investigate these things. So I keep saying to everybody, you're not going to investigate nice things. It does sound like, you're absolutely spot on, Jack. It sounds like bastardisation from 1972 to get into the Defence Force, which was what it was like then. I hope it doesn't exist anymore. I couldn't guarantee it. But yes, that's exactly what it sounds like. And the term for it back then was bastardisation. You can Google it and see it. And it's really important to know that you are going to come across that. Still happens. I wouldn't be surprised. They reckon they're toughening you up in case you get captured by the enemy. Bullshit. All right. So some of the things, other things that have been happening around the place this week. Where WorkSafe down in Victoria, a young apprentice who was operating a lathe where he was feeding steel rods into the lathe, which was spinning, has got serious head injuries and has been awarded $2.1 million in relation to that accident. And his employer has been fined $2.24 million and placed on a 5-year communities correction order. Now, if the young apprentice dies as a result of those injuries, eventually, or had died at the spot, there are industrial manslaughter laws in Victoria that are going to be more serious for that guy's employer. So that's something to watch that's going on down in Victoria. Yeah, in Sydney, a sexual harassment payout was made to a worker, and Fiona Taylor received $268,233.64 in compensation for a matter she took to court where her employer was sexually harassing her. So that happened. That was reported this week in the Financial Review. It's International Fraud Week. You can't really see it unless I put my white hair there. There I go. White hair does come in handy. It's International Fraud Awareness Week around Australia. What does that mean? Let's have a look at a short, very short video in relation to that. I say this a lot, people. I say it quite a bit. If you go to this court where I live, Southport on the Gold Coast, when they say stand up for sentencing when it's an insurance fraud matter, particularly related to a stolen motor vehicle, you see those people visibly shake. They are there and they are terrified when the magistrate says, please stand up for sentencing. And they have their lawyer next to them and they're nicely dressed. And the lawyers told them, you are facing 14 years in jail for insurance fraud. That's what they get in Queensland for a stupid mistake. For insurance fraud, from a silly thing that they did, it's the same as murder. Maximum penalty. No one gets it, but their lawyer makes sure they understand that they could. Oh, if the magistrate's car had been stolen the night before, you don't want to be in that situation, people. So that's something to look at. In Sydney this week, and it's coming around to this time of year, there was a scaffolding collapse that had been reported by WorkSafe in Victoria. Now, you are not an engineer, you're not a construction expert, and you are going to be sent along as an investigator to do scaffolding collapses. And there'll be 3 or 4 people injured at that workplace as a result of that. 1 maybe seriously, 2 maybe seriously. You'll be going along to do veranda collapses at end-of-year school parties put on by the parents because too many people were standing on the veranda and it collapsed because it was old and rotten, that sort of thing. And it doesn't just happen in Queensland. It happens in Victoria, happens in South Australia, happens in Tasmania. Things collapse. And you're going to be sent along to these. You're not an engineer. You're not a construction specialist. You're an investigator, government, private or corporate, and you have to go and investigate that. How are you going to go about it? What are you going to do? How are you going to take a statement? Well, next week in Investigations Uni, we're going to have part 1 of a 3-week series in how to go about that, in particular in relation to statement taking. Okay, now this is statement taking we haven't put in this program in the 74 preceding ones, and there'll be 75, 76 and 77 going in depth into it. merely for the reason to show you that you can actually go and do a scaffolding lapse investigation, a sexual harassment investigation, a lathe that went loading investigation that went wrong and a person was seriously injured. So that's really important. Grant Thornton, one of the biggest supporters of the Australian Security Academy, have been advertising Fraud Week this week, and they've got some really good videos and information from Grant Thornton on LinkedIn. So it's worth a look, people. You get there and have a little bit of a look around Grant Thornton. Hi, Kat. Kat's appeared on the show. She's there on the left. And they're a great team at Grant Thornton with some really good stuff about fraud. So have a look at it. Fraudster in New South Wales Workers' Compensation Scheme. Now, this one must be a real miss big because she defrauded them with $10,487.36. That's not a lot of money to get a fraud conviction on, but it's going to go against that person in the future. So something to consider before you do it. So obviously she's said she can't work, and then she's either worked somewhere else or done something wrong and didn't comply with the policy, and they found out about it in New South Wales, and she's been convicted of cheating the scheme down there. Whoops, I'll come back to that one. Catholic Church said an abuse victim in Melbourne in Victoria deserved $250,000, and this week he was awarded $3 million for his abuse by the Catholic Church. So the lawyers for the Catholic Church got their maths wrong there, and the jury gave him $3 million. So that happened this week down in Melbourne. I told you last week about a great reference. If you're looking for information on how to go about insurance investigations, in particular in relation to insurance policies, that sort of thing, there is a really great website and a really great guy called Professor Alan Manning, who's an Australian security graduate student, licensed private investigator and loss adjuster as well. So, and dripping in other qualifications, his website is here, and they've got a significant increase in their business. And they've advertised this week on LinkedIn for investigators or loss adjusters. So if you're an investigator and you want to work in the top of the game area in relation to liability investigations for general insurance, you can go and talk to Professor Alan Manning, and they'd love to hear from you down there. So they're hiring investigators at LMI, and so that's in New South Wales and in Victoria. One of the larger users, investigators, very good team, and you'll get really good experience working for them. Emails from Greece show that PricewaterhouseCoopers helped the Russians dodge sanctions in the last moments before sanctions came in. This has been reported everywhere on LinkedIn this week. It's something that, again, has got PricewaterhouseCoopers into even more trouble with their reputation globally in relation to what they've done. Probably made it more popular in some other countries, but not in Western countries. So that's been brought out in the press this week. Vendor management have employed 2 more Australian Security Academy students this week, and they want more. Okay, so get in touch with vendor management. Where are you going to find out about vendor management? And Investigative Services Group, where are you going to find out about them? Go and jump on Australian Security Academy Facebook page, where we have Australian Private Investigator, Corporate Government Investigation jobs. So I try and put them up every week. I put up a few there this week for surveillance agents and for factual investigators. Don't miss out on it. It's a great little resource to save you clicking around Seek forever and a day, and something to go and check on and subscribe to. You have to answer 2 questions. Are you an Australian citizen? Are you looking for work as an investigator? If you answer yes to those, you're pretty well likely to go in there. On our YouTube channel, we're putting up lots of short videos of 30 to 60 seconds duration for Fraud Week. So you can see some of those videos that feature Pat Flynn, Casey Pine there. I've got short videos on there with me presenting on something, and 3 people have watched them and nobody's liked them. Pat Flynn's got 2 up there this week. We put up one 2,200 people watched, and 13 people liked, and another one 4,900 people watched and 35 people liked. So you jump on that one and have a look at the short section, and you'll see some great entertaining short videos about what we do here at the Australian Security Academy. A lot of people ask me, well, you know, you teach and you assess and you come on this show, what else do you do? We receive, to check qualifications of some of our 20,000 students over the last 23 years, 15 requests a week to check that their qualifications are valid and were true at the time we issued them. It doesn't cost anybody anything. It's something we do. And it's not just for New South Wales, Victoria, Tasmania, South Australia, Western Australia, wherever else, Queensland, where else I've got. People gravitate with our qualifications in security risk management, government investigation all around the world. And we receive these from London. We receive these from India, Pakistan, South America. So it's something we do that's behind the scenes that nobody else ever hears about or gets told about. But you can rely on that. If your qualification is authentic, we can prove it as something that we have to do. So, yeah, I know, Pat, get on there, get on here, please, people. Someone get on there and don't like Pat's stuff, all right? All right, just don't like them and like mine. Good on you, Pat. Oh, dear, oh, dear. So, lost my place here. Just going to make sure I've covered everything. Yeah. Previous to date investigations uni, I showed a video about a fatal accident happened down in Tasmania. Now, you've heard me saying there's been big issues down in Tasmania with licensing and confusion in government down there, because what's happened, there's been a combination of what I'm about to show you, which is a tragic accident for a chef working remotely in Pinegana in Tasmania, which is in the middle of nowhere. It's a long way to get in, and it was at a dairy where they make cheese and stuff like that. And then there was the Devonport accident where 5 children were killed at this time of year for an end of school ceremony. The Workplace Standards Authority down in Tasmania had to do both those investigations and stuffed them both up. And in this one I'm about to show you, the government investigators lied about having done the investigation, which they didn't do, and said it related to legal professional privilege, that they couldn't show anyone the investigation that they didn't do. Well, they couldn't show anyone because they didn't do an investigation. No documents exist, so there's no legal professional privilege. This is just by way of explanation of what's happened down in Tasmania. It's just got out of control with trauma-informed training replacing being a decent human being and knowing how to investigate. Workplace Standards Tasmania are an embarrassment to the government investigation, regulatory compliance industry in Australia. That was absolutely disgusting. They let the deceased man's family down. Well, they let the deceased down. They are responsible for going onto work sites and checking electrical systems. So they can come along to your work site, unplug your electrical cord, switch it off and cut it in half until you go and replace it because they deem it to be faulty. They couldn't even do an investigation in relation to who did the electrical work or identify who did the electrical work that led to that poor man's tragic death. So really, really awful work by the Workplace Standards in Tasmania. But you could rock over to Workplace Standards and say you know how to do an investigation and you know how to do it with empathy. You go straight up to the first person in line. Yeah, really disappointing down there. And what's even more disappointing is pendulum swing. So they've realised they've got a crap regulatory authority who don't know how to investigate. And there's things down there like silicosis, dust diseases from manufactured stone, there, other fatal accidents where people are injured, psychological injuries, that sort of thing. Yes, there are really good loss adjusters and really good investigators in Tasmania, don't get me wrong, but they don't work for workplace standards internally. That's where the problem is. So as a result of that, all Tasmanian government departments have been sent along for trauma-informed investigation training. It's more about being guilty about being someone doing an investigation than it is about actually doing a proper investigation. It won't solve the problem. The pendulum swung, but it was used with the wrong tools to fix the problem. The problem needs to be fixed is having trained, qualified investigators at Workplace Standards Tasmania, not people with political appointments or with mates in there that just put them in there. Don't ever believe that all government investigators holding positions in there are deserving people. It's a classic example of them not being so. Workplace Standards Tasmania. It's really disappointing to see how that family was treated with a lie, legal professional privilege. And their lawyer, who had to go along and stick up for workplace standards, called it regrettable. I've got better words for it than that. So, yeah, really awful situation there. So I didn't like seeing how that evolved out. So people, within that, what we've got to look forward to next week in particular is Investigations Uni and going in-depth in statement taking. So if you're an Australian Security Academy student, you're not invited to our Friday Investigations Uni, which precedes Spy Curious. Get in touch with me. And when you do our CPD program in there, you can download specific statements of completion in relation to various things, and this one's in common law document discovery, workers' compensation investigations. We have them for time and event lines, for statement taking, for report writing, for a whole bunch of things. So you can, when you complete the CPD program in there, it adds a little bit of extra to your resume and to your potential employability. Imagine if Workplace Standards actually had continuous professional development. Then they would have known, oh, there was an electrician that worked on this dishwasher, we better find out who it was. Instead of not even bothering to even consider who it was. Investigators investigate. They're not order takers. They're investigators. So that's our role. You're an investigator, get out there and investigate. I did say Andrew Davis from ISG Group is looking for investigators, factional investigators in New South Wales. And this is what he said to us. I and my top investigators attained their Certificate 3-3U, the Australian Security Academy, and I would like to maintain that same level of quality moving forward. Thanks, Andrew. I really appreciate that, mate. His whole team are Australian Security Academy graduates. And so are LMIs. They have extensive range of people down there. A great team at LMI. And there was another job I haven't mentioned yet. I've just got to bring it up because it's in Brisbane. I've got to be able to find it. Here it is. Sarah Tilley down at Quantum Corp. They're looking for factional investigators in Brisbane and on the Gold Coast. So there's two jobs in that one. So you can have great opportunity to work for Quantum Corp. Very long established investigation agency, around about 35 years, I think, been around. So you can get a job there with Quantum Corp. If you're a licensed factual investigator in Queensland or on the Gold Coast, you get the Gold Coast one, you get lifestyle with it. It's not bad, is it? It's pretty good. Have you ever thought about branching out to a place of the globe that's rocked? But pretty, plenty of work to do. Yeah. Yeah, pretty. It's very pretty. Don't tell anybody about it. We don't want everybody going there, so let's keep it pretty. Thanks, Joy. People, I've got to go. We had a very busy week. Thank you very much for tuning in and watching. Look forward to seeing you next week. Don't forget that Investigations Uni statement taking. That's a really big event. 3 full episodes of it. with Pat and I going really deep. We've never gone this deep into statement taking before. It's not because of any failure in what we're seeing. Thanks, Jack. See you next week, mate. Looking forward to it. Get 2 cups of coffee for next week, Chris. You'll need it, mate. It's not because we're seeing any failure in anything that we're seeing. It's just we've got a big demand for it at the moment. We're running now at 585 enrolled students currently in our investigation program. So we've got to up the tempo. And if you've studied statement taking before, there's some really big insights to how to go deeper into it, especially because I'm going to explain, like I didn't explain before, how you're going to investigate scaffold collapses, sexual harassment, injuries involving lathes, industrial accidents, and you've always worked in an office, you've never been in a factory in your life. You can do it. And it all comes down to how you take statements. Do you have to know how to erect scaffolding? Do you have to know how to operate a lathe? Do you have to know the sexual harassment legislation off by heart? Find out next week on Investigations Uni. Thanks for watching, people. See you next week.
작전 종료. 전원 복귀할 것.
That's my mission complete for this week, episode 239. Oh yeah, Joy had her fingerprints taken this week. She's got lots of work to do, so she's going to be working very busily all over Christmas, New Year's studying. So good on you, Joy. Congratulations on having your fingerprints taken at the Victorian Police Licensing Regulation Division and letting us all know that it was a quick and happy process. See you next week, everyone. Thank you.